What is up, guys? Marcellus Williams, aka TheSwolefessor, to educate you on health, fitness, social well-being. And today, guys, we're going in depth in the importance of a full range of motion and locking out on your presses.
I am the greatest.
Someone look power! Someone look power! Someone look dash! Someone look power!
Alright, guys, so before I get right into this, let me go ahead and stop and say that if you have not seen my last informative video, over 4 tips to help you discern between valid fitness information and invalid information, I'm going to link that down below. I strongly suggest you go watch that because a lot of the things that I talk about in that video are going to apply to this in order to help you guys get an understanding of what I'm saying and understand why what I'm telling you is scientifically based, it's factual, regardless of all the bullcrap that you may have been hearing over the past few months, years, whatever. So, getting into the topic itself. And yes, I've touched on this briefly before in the videos, but it's come to my attention due to like comments and just, people don't have a full understanding of this, so I'm about to try to break it down for you guys. So, as far as the importance of full range of motion, most people don't argue that yes, a full range of motion is important. Why? Because in order for our muscles to grow and to get stronger, we have to make them do more work. That's the whole point of progressive overload, having them do more work, whether it's, increasing reps, increasing volume, increasing weight. That's the main way that we try to do is by increasing weight, right? So we have to be doing more work. Well, obviously, guys, your muscles are doing more work when they go through a full range of motion than when they go through a partial range of motion. For example, your bicep has to do more work curling from all the way down here to up here than just from here to here. Obviously, you're doing more work coming all the way up. You do a whole lot more work on the bench press when you have to come all the way down, touch your chest, full range of motion, and all the way up versus just coming halfway down, or even what a lot of powerlifters do, right? They get a very wide grip, a crazy, exaggerated arch. Why? Because it cuts the range of motion down. They come down a couple inches, back up. Now, are they able to move a lot more weight that way? Yes. Is it the best way to bench as far as injury prevention, true strength, and muscle building? Of course not. Why? Well, because it's such a short range of motion that their chest isn't getting a whole lot of work done. In the same sense that, yes, they're able to move more weight that way, but it's not true strength in the sense of if you're able to bench 315 with just a normal retracted scapula coming all the way down and all the way up, then you are stronger on bench than somebody who can only bench 315 if they have the huge arch, the really wide grip. It can only come down a couple of inches. Why? Because they're able to move that weight due to the range of motion. So a lot of people don't argue that in terms of understanding why range of motion is important. Now you have some people who try to say things about like, time under tension and tempo, things like that. I've already done a video over that. I'll link that down below as well so that you guys can have an understanding of, how time under tension is to be used, what that really is, how tempo is really used, and what it kind of plays out in the whole grand scheme of things in terms of just proper form and progressive overload. But a brief overview, guys, is basically that time under tension comes from, once again, where our muscles have a longer time under tension when we're coming from here all the way up than just right here. Using a little bit less weight, but getting a full range of motion is better for time under tension than using heavy weight and just going as fast as we can, or only coming halfway up. So that's kind of a brief summary of that. But you guys can check that video out. I'll link that down below as well. But what I really want to focus on today, guys, is the importance of locking out on your presses, because a lot of you were showing great concern with yesterday's leg video on the leg press, where I was locking out on the leg press, and you're like, oh bro, don't do that, you're gonna mess up your knees, you're gonna snap your stuff up. And guys, I've heard this so many times. I've seen people say this on so many different people's videos. Don't lock out on leg press, don't lock out on your presses. And guys, this needs to stop. This myth needs to die. And I understand that this video alone isn't gonna kill it off, but I plan to deal a very fatal blow with this video. So here's the thing, guys, there is none, I repeat, no scientific research or evidence suggesting that the general population should not lock out on their presses. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I'll put an article down below explaining the importance of locking out on your presses, whether it's bench press, overhead press, the importance of locking out all the way for your elbows, the importance of locking out on your squats and on your leg press. And that's another thing, guys. People don't ever say anything about, locking out on squats really, or locking out on bench press, but for some reason, people just freak out when you lock out on the leg press. Now, I know a few reasons as to why this is. One, that video came out with that woman where she was leg pressing and her legs, just snapped on her basically. But what a lot of people don't know is that it's one of two things. The woman either had pre-existing conditions where she already had issues with her bones and joints, such as maybe she was double jointed or had some physiological problem with her joints, or she simply had too much weight. Now guys, here's the thing. If you, on any movement, if you have too much weight, or if you increase weight too quickly, instead of making gradual progressive overload, if you just decide, hey, I'm gonna just add 50 pounds to this movement today, of course you're gonna hurt yourself. Even if you don't snap your arms up, if you're on bench press and you suddenly add 50 more pounds than what you're used to, of course you're gonna hurt yourself. Why? Because your body's not used to the workload. It's not gonna be able to handle that type of weight. So that's neither here nor there. But the fact is, guys, as far as just general population, locking out on your presses is not only important, it's healthy. For one, guys, you have to keep in mind, the lockout is the strongest part of the movement. That's why on bench press, the easiest part, locking out at the top. On squat, the easiest part, locking out the top. Same thing with leg press. That's why you'll find so many people, when they're resting, you're not resting down here on your chest, right? On bench press, no. You're resting up here, catch your breath. Then you come back down. Why? Because that's the longest part of the lockout. So where did this myth come from? So a couple of things. First of all, when you have medical experts, right, who are talking to a very specific population, whether it's people who are like, double jointed, or people that have issues or already have previous injuries to their knees or their elbows, they're gonna warn these people, hey, don't lock out on your presses because you already have a lot of damage here and that's gonna add extra stress to it, right? Okay, well, what happens is people will read things like that and they'll either, one, take it out of context. And what I mean by that is they'll assume that, oh, all I know is this medical expert said not to lock out on presses, so nobody should lock out on presses, when the medical experts are addressing a very specific population, outliers that go outside of the general population. Or two, people just have this weird just assumptions they make. Like, for example, it's like, oh, well, they're telling this person who has hurt elbows or knees not to lock out on presses, which means that if I want to avoid hurting my elbows or knees, I must not lock out on presses. And guys, that type of thinking doesn't work. That's like if somebody just broke their leg, right? A medical expert's probably gonna tell them, hey, you need to stay off that leg for a while. You probably shouldn't be walking around for a while. So does that mean you're gonna go tell the general population, hey man, if you wanna avoid messing up your legs, don't walk around? No, that doesn't make sense, guys. You can't do things like that. And that's where the whole separating valid information from invalid information video comes into hands. One thing that I talked about was you can't take situational things that apply to very specific populations and apply to the general population. That doesn't work, guys. The fact is, for a normal, healthy individual, locking on your presses is not only safe, it's healthy for your bones and joints. There's this myth that whenever you lock out the top of a movement, that all the weight and all that pressure goes from your muscles into your joints. That's not how that works, guys. There's no evidence or research to back that up. Now, obviously, if you're just doing something like this, right, then that's not gonna be good for your joints. It's not gonna be good for any part of your body because you're not controlling the movement. But if you're controlling the movement, controlling going down, exploding coming up, strong lockout, that is not only healthy, guys, it's very beneficial for your joints. People have to keep in mind, working out is not just for your muscles, guys. It's for your bones, your joints, your tendons. It's to make your body healthy as a whole. That's the whole point of resistance training. At the end of the day, it's not really about being huge, strong, and aesthetic as so much as it's about just like being healthy, functional, mobile. People have to keep that in mind. That's the whole reason why you're supposed to be able to do that. Even with things like leg extensions, people say, oh, don't lock at the very top. Guys, yes, can leg extensions put a certain amount of torque on the knee depending on how you have it positioned? Yes, but if you're positioned correctly on the leg extension machine, the strongest part of the contraction for your quad is going to be at the very top. So you're telling me that you want to miss out on the strongest part of the contraction on a movement? That doesn't make sense, guys. That doesn't make sense at all. Now, another way that this myth got started was you have bodybuilders, right? And they do the whole time under tension thing where they don't lock out quite at the top. Why? Because they want to keep that pump going, they want to keep the fatigue on their muscles. And that works in the sense of, guys, yes, you are going to fatigue the muscle more that way. Why? Because since the strongest part of the lift is at the lockout, once you're locked out, it kind of gives your muscle a little bit of time to rest, correct? But the thing is, keep in mind, guys, they do that to fatigue the muscle more. Not so much because there's anything wrong with locking out, but because they're just trying to fatigue the muscle more. Now, I can get it, this is a whole separate video, but we can get into the fact of, okay, well, what's more effective? Locking out, getting that full range of motion, getting that strong contraction, or not locking out and just fatiguing the muscle? Because keep in mind, guys, there's a lot of research over how getting a full range of motion and locking out on your presses, like going all the way down and all the way up, how that helps you with building muscle, building strength, and with that, helping you have healthy joints. But there's not a whole lot of research out there, actual scientific-based research over how, fatiguing the muscle more by not locking out is going to help you grow more. Not necessarily, guys, because at the end of the day, if you can get that full range of motion and go all the way to the top and gradually increase the weight that way, that form of progressive overload is going to do a whole lot more for your body than, oh, I'm just fatiguing my muscles. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, you're fatiguing it, but you're missing out on the strongest part of the contraction at the top. So you have to consider that too, guys. Now, here's the main thing that I want you guys to think about, just in terms of just joint application. Because one thing that people say is like, okay, but I see a lot of bodybuilders, with banged up elbows, knees, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing, guys. More often than not, that's not from the compound movements. That's not from locking out. In fact, it's usually quite the opposite. part of it is because they don't lock out. Because keep in mind, guys, if you're always just stopping short of lockout every time, that means that your joints aren't getting used to being worked through the full range of motion that like they need to, the same way that your muscles aren't. So if you have that rare occasion where you build up your strength to a certain point, not locking out, and then you eventually do lock out, well, even though your muscles are used to that range of motion, your joints are not. So you've weakened your joints because you haven't been locking out on your pressing motions, and that's how injuries can happen. And also keep in mind, guys, that a lot of bodybuilders use excessive amounts of isolation work where they're just overworking their joints. Like if you're somebody where you come in and you're like, oh, I'm not really big on squats, and you're just doing excessive amounts of leg extension over and over and over, or tricep press downs over and over and over, that becomes excessive. That just becomes wear and tear on the joints. Once again, it's not so much just from locking out at the bottom, but it's the fact that you're overworking the joints itself with those isolation movements. That's why I expressed to you guys to put a focus and emphasis on your compound movements, because those are what should be the base and the bulk of your work, because your body can handle that better. It's better and healthier and stronger for your joints, and multi-joint movements are going to be a lot healthier than just isolation work all day, every day, all the time. That's why I tell you to use isolation works at the end to kind of like, just finish burning the muscle out, or to help bring up weak points. But the bulk of your routine should never be isolation movements, guys, and that's exactly why. That's why a lot of bodybuilders have those issues. It's because of excessive things like that. It has nothing to do with the fact that they lock out. Because think about it, the dogma of bodybuilders is that you shouldn't lock out. So yet, despite that, you see how many of these bodybuilders do have problems with their bones, their knees, their joints, their tendons, etc., right? And yet, like I said, I'm right here. I'm a powerlifter, guys. Been lifting for 6 years, full range of motion, completely, like on all of my lists from start all the way up to now. Even with powerlifting now, guys, lifting the amount of weight that I do, despite what I weigh, full range of motion. And guys, I've never been injured. I don't have any problems with my elbows, my knees. I feel great. I'm strong. I'm functional. I'm athletic. I can move. No problems at all whatsoever, guys. None. And I do a full range of motion. You guys see on my videos, I lock out on everything. And it's because, guys, like I said, you can't take things that apply to certain specific population or outliers and try to apply it to the general public. Like I said, there's tons and tons of scientific-based research and evidence that explain why we need to make sure that we're locking out. Like I said, it's the strongest part of the contraction. Like at the top is the strongest part of the movement. Why would you not do it? There's no reason not to do it. Like I said, people got freaked out by the girl, but like I said, she either had pre-existing conditions already in terms of something was already up with her bones and her joints to begin with, or she simply had too much weight on it. But if you're following a structured program with structured progressive overload, where you have a certain amount of sets and reps and you increase by, like 5 to 10 pounds, small increments, you don't have to worry about that, because you're never gonna be doing more than what your body can handle. Like I said, when you're making huge jumps in weight, that you can get hurt whether you lock out or not. Or, if you have pre-existing conditions, like I said, if you're double jointed, then you may not lock out on every movement. It all depends on what a doctor prescribes to you if you already have issues. But like I said, guys, one of the big reasons that a lot of people have those issues to begin with is because they don't lock out on their movements. It's as simple as that, guys. Like I said, if I'm curling right from, let's say I curl I start right here and I come here, but I never go all the way down, and I build up the weight, and one day the weight's just so heavy and it does go all the way down, like I said, my joints aren't going to be used to that. So that can cause wear and tear, that can cause pain. That's why it's so important to use full range of motion from the very start so that you can build it up. And if you haven't been doing that, you may need to do a slight deload so that your body can get used to it. And for those of you worried about but if I go down in weight, won't I lose my gains? No, because you're almost getting a brand new stimulation of work. Why? Because you're making your muscles do more work now. Whereas before you were only, pushing this far up. Now that you're going through the full range of motion, you're making your muscles do more work, and your body will get used to it, and you'll get back where you were with your weights in time. So that's pretty much it, guys. It's not really complicated. There's not a whole lot to it. It's just misinformation and BS that has been spread because people either take things out of context or they don't understand why people do things the way they do. Like I said, think about it, guys. Think about it. If it was true for bodybuilders, like I said, that, don't lock out on your presses, yet why do all these bodybuilders have issues? Why do so many of them have problems with their elbows, their knees, their joints, yet so many of them don't lock out on anything? So just something to think about, guys. Like I said, at the end, and plus something to think about, guys, is at the end of the day, and I've said this in other videos before, you have to think when it comes to your weight training in terms of carryover application to real life, right? It's like if somebody hurts their leg and their doctor tells them, hey, you don't need to be doing any running or sprinting right now. That doesn't mean you go and tell everybody else in the general population, hey, you don't need to be running or sprinting, it's bad for you. No, that doesn't work. And it's the same thing, guys. Like, it's the same thing with locking on your presses. I've said this before in a past video, if our bodies were made to do this, to fully extend, to fully lock out, they wouldn't be able to do it. It's as simple as that. So unless you fall into one of those very special groups, which I guarantee you 90% of the people watching this video do not, there's no reason not to lock out on your presses. No reason not to lock out on your movements. Don't live, guys, out of fear and with misunderstanding of things and taking things out of context. You have to really sit down, and because if you really just sit down and think about it, it's not even that complicated of a topic. It's the mere fact that why would I miss out on the strongest part of the movement, on the strongest part of the contraction, when the whole point of me, building my body up with strength and hypertrophy is to make my body do more work. It just doesn't make sense. That's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, leave a comment down below, let me know that you did. If you did not enjoy it, leave a comment down below, let me know what I can do to get better. Like the video, share, subscribe, keep it simple, specific, scientific. I'll catch y'all later.
I am the greatest.
Someone look color. Someone look color.